Hi there, my name is David A. Robertson, and I am an author. I am right now in Treaty 1 territory here in Winnipeg, and I am a Norway House Cree Nation band member, which makes me Cree. Norway House is in Treaty 5 territory. And I have written a number of books, primarily for kids, from picture books to YA, written a memoir, graphic novels, and I'm here to talk to you about my middle grade fantasy series called The Mississauga Saga. The Barren Grounds came out last year, and The Great Bear is just out now. And I want to talk to you a little bit about The Great Bear as we continue the adventures of Morgan and Eli and their friends in Mississauga, which is through the portal in this other reality on a planet called Ski. Just like the Barren Grounds, the Great Bear has its own influences. Some of them are shared. Narnia continues to be an influence. Cree constellation stories continue to be an influence. The Great Bear is an adaptation of a Cree constellation story. But with the Great Bear, a big influence was a story I read as a kid called Tom's Midnight Garden. And it's a story that I read a lot of times as a kid because I loved it so much, and I've read it also a lot of times as an adult. One of the things that I love most about this story, aside from the fact that it's a portal story, just like the Mississauga Saga is that it deals with time travel. And time travel has always been something that I've been really influenced by. And also just that I've loved. I love reading time travel stories. I love watching time travel stories. And I've always wanted to do my own time travel story. And the Great Bear offered me the opportunity to be able to do that. And so what happens in the Great Bear is that Morgan and Eli are dealing with some really personal and difficult struggles. Eli is being bullied at school because he's Indigenous, because of his long hair and his braids. And Morgan is also dealing with, as in the Barren Grounds, with uncertainty. If her mother gave her away, if she was taken away from her mother, and the fact that she has never met her mother before and doesn't know the answers. But all of a sudden she's given her mother's phone number, and she is not brave enough, she feels, to call her mother. And so to escape these struggles, Morgan and Eli decide that they're going to try and go back in time because they want to visit a friend that they lost in the Barren Grounds, Ochek. And it's no spoiler alert to tell you that they are successful. And they go back in time to a different Mississauga before the White Time, and they go on a new adventure where they encounter the titular Great Bear, Muskwa, and he is terrorizing the North Country, and they have to find a way to stop him. In the process, they find what they need personally to go back to Earth and either call their mom or stand up to the bullies that have been terrorizing them at school. And so one of the things that I think you can take from this book as you stack it on your shelves in the library or bring it into the classroom, just like the Barren Grounds, it deals with the foster care system, which is really important. It also is a book where you have positive Indigenous representation, which is equally important. But with the Barren Grounds having a climate change theme, the Great Bear has a bullying theme. And one of the things that I hope comes from this book is not only that kids who are being bullied find the strength and the belief in their own strength, their own identity, and their own confidence that they can stand up to bullying, that they learn how to deal with people who are bullying them, and get through a really difficult time. And a lot of Indigenous kids are bullied. A lot of kids are bullied generally. And so I thought it was a really important topic to bring up. And I think also for kids who read this book who aren't being bullied, it will give them the tools that they need to stand up for people who are being bullied or stand with people who are being bullied. And in that way, it's trying to create better allies, better friends, a stronger community. And so that is was the main theme for me in The Great Bear. Is something that I feel very strongly about. It's something that I encountered when I was a kid, and I wanted kids to have some sort of a resource that would entertain them, but also teach them a few things that hopefully they can incorporate into their own lives. And so I hope that that's something that you can bring into the classroom or into the library and have that same experience. I guess another quick influence for me for The Great Bear was The Empire Strikes Back. And if you ask any Indigenous writer what their influences are, almost all of them are going to say Star Wars. And so The Great Bear was heavily influenced by The Empire Strikes Back, mostly because it is the middle part of an initial trilogy, and it leaves Morgan in particular in the worst possible scenario at the end of it. And that's why the third book is coming out earlier next year in the summer of 2022. But I hope you really enjoy The Great Bear. It was published by Puffin, and who are great to work with. And I'm looking forward to more books in the series, and hopefully speaking to your classes and speaking to the kids about this book in person, but also virtually if we have to do that. And we've all gotten used to that. So thank you very much, Echo Zanny, and all my best.
Hi, my name is Karleen, and I wrote the book Street Belongs to Us. And I've been in Canada for 20-something years, but before that, I was born and raised in Los Angeles in a place called Rosemead, which was about 15-minute drive east of downtown LA. It was a very mixed race suburb, predominantly Mexican. My own family had Mexican and white heritage. My grandma had come from Mexico as a little kid, and throughout my childhood, she just basically told me nonstop stories about Mexico, about being Mexican in the U.S., and about her relationships throughout. So I was raised on these stories, and I wanted a chance to pay tribute to them. When I was a kid, I lived on a street where there was a bend, and the cars went really fast. It was a bit scary when you're a kid trying to play. But this one summer, they tore up the street to put in sidewalks, and it turned into this like big muddy wonderland where the kids got to play. And the main characters who are playing are Alex and her friend Wolf, and they have all these like mud ball fights and everything as they work out like who they are as people. And they're about 12 years old at this time, and Alex is based on me, like a little tomboy / trans / non-binary character who's trying to figure out how to be okay in that body. And she's really like loves her friend Wolf and her family. And Wolf is like he's always having a bit of trouble with school and getting too upset. He's dealing with grief because his mom had died, and he likes to wear an army uniform every day, which kind of is unnerving to the adults. But they really love each other, and they go on adventures together. And the other characters are the Nana, who's the grandma of Alex, and she's makes them little snacks and stuff and tells them all these stories from being a kid who immigrated during the Mexican Revolution. I'll read you a short passage from the book about when Alex is talking about her body changing. Alex says, Alex is getting, starting to develop chest. So she says to Wolf, "Look at them." "Look at what?" "Oh, come on. Can't you see how big my chest has gotten?" "Oh, I hadn't noticed," he says, staring more closely at me. "I can see that one." He points at the right nipple. "Geez, don't point." "Oh, sorry," he says, lowering his head. Hey, how come one's bigger than the other? I don't know. I didn't mean to make you mad, he says. I was just curious. I know. It's okay. I wish I knew more about what's happening to me. Well, it's probably fine, he says. They probably just grow when they're ready. I was reading about orangutan development during lactation, and they say that I'm not an orangutan, Wolf. Yeah, I know, but they're primates like us, and there might be some facts that are helpful. He stops talking when he sees I have my hands over my face. Wolf, I don't know what I am. If I'm a girl or a boy, if I'll be a woman or a man, or what? So? Well, these are coming, I point to my chest. And then I won't be able to hide them, and I'll have to be a woman. That doesn't make sense, he says. We're animals. Some animals are boys or girls, and some aren't. And some change. It's not such a big deal. Like seahorses, when they want to have babies. Wolf, it might not be a big deal to animals, but it's a big deal to people. Oh, yeah. You could be right, he nods. What am I going to do, I ask. I'm not very good with people, so I don't know what to say about them. He pauses to consider the situation. But I don't think a chest growing big automatically makes you a woman. It must be up to you. If you decide to be a guy, then your chest, whatever it looks like, will be a guy's chest because it's yours. And if you decide to be a woman, well, then logically, it's the opposite. Really? Yeah, I think so, he says. Scientifically, it would be impossible for someone outside of your body to know what your body feels like inside. You're the only one that would have access to that data. I could find a library in Long Beach and try to get some more material on it, though. Oh, yeah? I'd really like that, I say. I also, just let you know, offer a novel unit plan on my website, karleenpj.com, with individual lessons that can be used by teachers and educators and parents wherever you are. Thank you very much for listening.
Hi, my name is Rosena Fung, and I am the creator of Living with Viola. So Living with Viola is a story about Livy. She is about to start grade 6 at a new school, and it is also a story about her anxiety. So her anxiety is personified in the form of a shadowy twin named Viola who follows her everywhere, and it amplifies all her deepest doubts and insecurities and fears. And so this book is actually really about Livy trying to learn how to live with Viola, or in other words, it's about learning how to manage her anxiety. This book is based on my own personal experiences with anxiety. Similarly, when I was in grade 6, I started feeling a lot of similar feelings that I have depicted in the book, a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, that to the point where it's kind of debilitating. When I was growing up, the discourse on mental health is not as prevalent as it is now. So my parents and myself, we lacked the language to truly articulate what it was that I was feeling. And it wasn't until I was in my teens that I was officially diagnosed with anxiety and panic disorder. And it was truly a revelation. It felt finally like I wasn't alone. There were words and descriptions that I felt and identified with so truly. So I'm hoping that this book will help readers, young and old alike, to feel that they're not alone. This book is also very much about Livy embracing her identity, the things that she loves, and that who she is, where she comes from. For myself, I love reading, I love plushies. They help me cope. They provide the basis for coping mechanisms. Just to show you, I'm not kidding. I love plushies. Those were actually the inspiration for Livy's favorite plushie. So anyways, thank you for reading, and I hope you enjoy.
Hi, I'm Marty Chan, kids author, playwright, storyteller, and creator of Kylie the Magnificent. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and how I came up with the idea for my book, Kylie the Magnificent. Well, if I'm going to talk about my book, I probably should show it to you. But I'm going to do it in a way that will let you know what the story's about. All right, so here we go. My book, Kylie the Magnificent. What? No, that's not a book. Let me try it again. My book, Kylie the Magnificent. All right, obviously I didn't have lunch before I did this video. One more time, here we go. My book, Kylie the Magnificent. There we go. If you haven't guessed by now, this book has a little bit of magic in it. In particular, stage magic. You see, the lead character, Kylie, wants to break into the world of stage magic, and she wants to get into a show, a talent show for magicians. Unfortunately, the director of the show has some very old world ideas about women in magic. And he tells Kylie that girls only make good assistants to magicians, not lead magicians themselves. Well, this upsets Kylie to no end, and she decides to prove the director wrong, and she comes up with a magic act. She teams up with her best friend Min to put together an act where Kylie is the lead magician. Now they decide to come up with a tribute to an old-time magician named Harry Houdini, who was a great magician, but an even better escape artist. He would escape from all sorts of devices, from handcuffs to chains to shackles to milk cans, and, most famous of all, a straitjacket. Kylie and her friend Min decide to put together their own version of a Harry Houdini escape. Unfortunately, as they're putting together their act, they have a difference of opinions, their egos clash, and they have a falling out. Not only does Kylie have to win over that director of the talent show, but she also has to win back her best friend Min. So that's what the book is all about, and I'm hoping you get a chance to check it out. Now, I'd like to read from the book, but I think I've got a better idea. You see, in writing and researching the book, I had to learn all sorts of magic tricks. Now, I went out and I bought all sorts of handcuffs and chains. I even have a straitjacket. And it's not easy to learn how to do escapes, and it took me a few attempts to get there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back in time, and I'm going to show you how difficult it was for me to learn how to do an escape. Attempt to escape from Harry Houdini handcuffs. Take 1. Ow! 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 Attempt to escape from Harry Houdini handcuffs. Take 7. Take 17. Take 34. Take 52. Take 77. Hey, can you pass me those keys? Hold on, my nose is itchy. It takes a little bit of effort, a lot of trial and error to learn how to escape. Now, what's really cool is that it's similar to writing, where it takes a lot of revision for you to come up with your story. For Kylie the Magnificent, I probably revised that book, I'd say 7 times before I had the version I was willing to send off to the publisher. There's a nice little connection between doing magic and writing, and it has to do with lots and lots of practice and lots of trial and error. If you want to get some more insight into what it's like to be a writer, check out my website, martychan.com, or if you're looking for writing tips, go to my YouTube channel, Marty Chan Author, and you'll get all sorts of cool ideas on how to become better writers. In the meantime, remember, when it comes to being a writer or a magician, it takes a lot of practice and a little bit of magic.
Hi, my name is Chad Lucas. I live near Halifax, Nova Scotia, and I'm the author of 2 middle grade novels. The first is called Thanks a Lot Universe. It's out now from Abrams Books, Amulet Kids. And the second is called Let the Monster Out, coming next May, also from Abrams and Amulet. Um, so Thanks a Lot Universe, my first novel, is the story of two boys, Brian and Ezra. They're both in the 7th grade, and Brian's going through some difficult family things. He struggles with anxiety, which gets worse after he ends up in a family crisis where he and his little brother end up in foster care. And Ezra is Brian's teammate on his basketball team, and he notices Brian struggling and he wants to help, but he also has a crush on Brian, and he's not sure if he wants to make that too public yet in the 7th grade. So this is a story that deals with a lot of themes that many junior high, middle grade kids could relate to these days. Dealing with anxiety, wrestling with your sexuality, trying to decide who you want to tell and when. And it's a book that's I've been very fortunate to receive some pretty great critical acclaim from it so far. Received starred reviews from Kirkus Reviews and the School Library Journal, and it was chosen as a Junior Library Guild Gold Standard selection. And best New York Times bestselling author Nick Stone called it her favorite middle grade novel of 2021. So that was a pleasant surprise. And so I think it would be a great fit in any school or classroom library. And my next book, Let the Monster Out, has some similar themes, but it's a very different kind of book. It's got some spooky elements as well. There's a boy named Quentin Bones Malone. He's a Black boy who moves to a mostly white small town, and some strange things start to happen. Adults start behaving oddly, and kids start seeing each other's nightmares and experiencing each other's nightmares. So it's got some sort of sci-fi spooky elements, but it also dives into just confronting your fears and trusting people to help you when you need it. Both of my books kind of have some themes along those lines. So I hope you'll check them out, and I hope to see you at the Fold Kids Festival this November.
Hi, my name is Angela Ahn, and I'm the author of Shirley's Notes from the Field and an earlier book, Christy Kimba. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself and my stories. I was born in Seoul, Korea, and my family immigrated to Canada in the early 70s. And I grew up in Richmond, BC, and then we moved to Vancouver when I was a little bit older. And other than 2 years living in Hong Kong and 2 years living in Toronto, Vancouver has been home my entire life. If you see my face, and you are currently looking at my face, you will see that I'm Asian, specifically East Asian. And when you look at me, upon first glance, you may make an assumption about me. And if I'm going to guess, that you look at me and you think, oh, she must be Chinese, maybe Japanese. And what that means to me is that my whole life, people have looked at me and never known really what to think, and they've almost never been right. So until pretty recently, most Canadians didn't really know or care about the huge cultural differences that make up the East Asian cultures. And I would say now, with the growing popularity of Korean music, TV, film, even food, I think Korea is more on the radar of Western culture than it has ever been before, certainly more so than when I was growing up. And I think for me, that's why I wrote my books in the first place. Being a Korean Canadian, I have always felt like a minority within a minority. And so you will notice that in my books, I do make a point of bringing up the idea that East Asia, people who are of East Asian descent, are not a monolith. In Peter Lee, I mentioned that one of the other boys has also the last name Lee, but he's the Chinese kind, not the Korean kind. And I also bring up the idea that one of the other boys, who's Korean in the story, Samuel, he kind of has like this jesting argument with the Chinese character that the Chinese character thinks Korean food is a bit weird, and the Korean character thinks Chinese food is a bit weird. I bring this up to show you that there's a huge variety and difference of opinion, cultural backgrounds, experiences within people who presumably look the same. It's important for me to recognize in my stories that As a Korean Canadian, my experiences are uniquely Korean Canadian, and they're not the same as people who may look a little bit similar to I am. A couple of other themes that I pretty consistently write about in my stories are feelings of belonging and identity, rooted very much in the fact that I feel like a minority within a minority. These are things that I've struggled with my entire life, and anybody who looks non-white, for lack of a better term, will undoubtedly struggle with these similar things. I've lived in Canada for 47 years, and some of you watching are probably not that old. And all these years of being a Canadian, I'm still viewed as an outsider and not part of mainstream culture. So this is something that I live with. These can be some pretty heavy topics, but they're important to talk about, and I'd encourage you to try to talk about some of them with your students. But I can suggest some other more universal themes that occur in Peter Lee. We've got sibling rivalry. Many children will be able to relate to the idea that maybe one of their siblings is perceived to be better at something than they are. And Peter struggles with knowing that although he's passionate about a topic, paleontology, his sister LB always seems to get more attention than him for her intellect. And what kinds of emotions does this stir up in a person, and how do you manage? Other topics that you could exclude could include would be parental expectations. Just because you're good at something or you're inherently intelligent, what kind of burden does that place on a person? You can have some interesting discussions about that, I think. And also another theme that runs pretty consistently throughout Peter Lee's Notes from the Field and also Krista Kimbap is multi-generational relationships. And in my stories, they're sort of complicated by this additional layer of like a second culture. But I feel like many students will be able to relate to trying to understand their grandparents or their parents and how that relationship with many levels of their family affects them on a daily basis. Peter Lee was inspired by something that we picked up on a family road trip to Drumheller, and I will leave you with that inspiration. We call him Braca. He's the Brachiosaurus that inspired the character of Trixie, LB's little favorite Steffi. And if you want to read the whole backstory to it, it's in the endnotes of the book. It's a bit of a long story. So I thank you for listening, and that if you use Peter Lee in your class, I hope that you will find it a jumping off point for some tougher issues that I really feel like we need to talk about in Canada involving race and identity. But also there are some universal themes that you can discuss about family. And I hope that you have a few chuckles, and I hope that you will seek out other books like mine. Unfortunately, there aren't too many specifically Canadian stories at the moment for middle grade readers that are written from the point of view of a diverse writer, diverse characters, but I hope you will seek out the ones that do exist. Anyway, thank you for listening. Again, it's Peter Lee's Notes from the Field and Krista Kimbap. And why do I keep doing that? I've got a few other things kind of brewing, so keep an eye out for other things coming from me. Thanks very much. Bye.